Good morning, everybody. Started this morning a little late. Apologize. So, I want to pull up a couple drawings really quick. So, we're actually going to some of these. Just 1 second. Hold off to the side for now. These are from last night's stream. Okay. Those aren't important right now. Alright. So, today looks pretty bullish overall. I want to go ahead and show the drawings. So what we need to really look for to complete is this cup. Now, technically it did complete already, um, but I don't think it's done pushing yet. Usually I expect the cup to complete, and then we start to build bear structure off of that. From that, that would give us the liquidity downward, retest the bottom, create the handle, and head upward. Now, on the daily time frame, the primary level we're looking at right now is this 20 ma. So currently that's at the 669.49. Very, very important level on the daily time frame. Now, with this pushing upward, this will be a short position. And again, that short position will just be forming that handle to the upside. So once we push this upper Bollinger here, we'll go ahead and take some shorts. Even though the day is bullish, so you are fighting the day a little bit, but it shouldn't be much of a fight. Again, should be fairly simple move from upper Bollinger to the 20 mile there on the 5 minute time frame. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning. Sorry if I sound super tired. Sleep very well last night. Okay, so that's the trade we're gonna be looking for. Is puts off of the top of this cup handle. Do have to go grab my phone in a second. Okay, and technically the SPY is pushing the level, so it is good to go grab those puts right now. I'm gonna go ahead and get some. Let me go grab my phone really quick, everybody. Right. Sorry about that. Okay. So I am in, let's see, I think the 659 puts. Let's make sure. Yeah, I'm in the 659 puts right now. And again, we will just be looking for our exit at that 20 ma. 20 ma on the 5 minute time frame is at the 658.77. So 659 puts will definitely cover that area. Now, I just want to take a look at a few things really quick. So I will just be quickly jumping through some symbols. Now, Bitcoin, we do have some nice bullish structure right here on the 5 minute time frame. Should complete this full cup to the upside. So very likely it's going to be that upside push range that we're looking for on the handle there. XY, bit of a red day, or a bit of a green day. QQQ pulling downward. QQQ showing us that there is a little bit of room on this cup. And I do apologize for having this big white background on it. Go ahead and try to delete that really quick. On QQQ, we should be expecting the top of this cup to hit. It was off by roughly 40 cents, so that's still not hitting the top of that cup. SPY. Our level's not here just yet, but it's slowly starting to pull down. Let's check the VVIX. Pulling downward. We do expect that. Should see a little elevation here. 119.37. It did reach 119.25. So we are expecting a slight upward tick in volatility currently to give us this handle. Now on SPY, because we do see QQQ needing to fully complete this handle, or needing to fully complete the cup, we can be seeing this push upward in QQQ prior to that. So just be watching for that. Semiconductors. See what we have going on here. Interesting. Actually, some bearish structure here on semiconductors. Forming an inverse handle right here, which we should be seeing as bullish structure to the upside, back down. So semiconductors giving us a little bit of a mixed signal there. Yeah, we should see this level hit at a SPY. Again, very likely we do see this push upward to complete this cup on QQQ before we see SPY and QQQ fully pull down. So I will be adding an additional put if we do push up once more, but nothing too crazy after that. We should be getting our level. Yeah, just looking for that 591.74, basically the 592. And that's on QQQ. Should give us this push very close to that 661 on SPY. Semiconductors having that nice bounce. Should pull up to the upper Bollinger there. That'd be a very great short position to take. Might do something with SOXS there. SOXS being the bear ETF for semiconductors. Potentially a 36 call to the upside would be really nice off of that. Assuming we have the rejection on that I'm expecting anyway. QQQ. Hold up to the 591.23. Not all the way to that level, but we'll see if it wants to take or not. Let's see, SPY. Still not set on this fully pulling down just yet. I am expecting QQQ to finish that cup first, prior to the pull down. Our VVIX did pull down to the 119.05, but it is slowly pulling back up, so it's at the 119.29. Not much of a movement, but it is something. Thank you. And then I want to look at Microsoft. Microsoft is still seeing some really nice bearish structure in here. That should be pretty much a no-brainer. Um, that 373 should definitely hit to the downside, complete that inverse cup, work on building a handle, and further down. So that supports our thesis a bit. Check NVIDIA. NVIDIA having that very large push to the upside, which does allow it to be shorted. Did complete a bullish cup. Sorry for all the other lines here, everybody. We did complete a bullish cup on NVIDIA, which means that we should be expecting bearish structure at the top here, down, form a handle, and upward. So a little bit of a conflicting sign here in terms of the semiconductor ETF versus NVIDIA. Let's see if we're getting our exit. Still looking for the 658, 64-ish range. I know we hit the 658.86, but I am looking for that 20-mile range to actually be pushed fully, so still looking for a little bit further downside before we exit. And again, don't be greedy, just take the exit on the majority of your positions here. Um, if you do have running contracts, leave the runners. If there's room to the downside, the runners will catch that, but we're not stressing about that one way or another. It's 20 more cents, come on. I want to take a look at the VVIX in a second here. So it has pulled up to 119.74. It was all the way up to 120.18. So it's all 119.95. So we should be seeing our level hit on SPY. Yeah, any second now. Okay, so our level's being hit. So going to go ahead and take profit on majority of the puts. Hold on. Okay, so I sold the majority. I now have a couple positions running just in case. Now, what that means when I say I leave them running, this means I set a stop loss slightly above the level. So if we're going to push upward, they are going to get stopped out and I'm still going to get my profit. I'm good. Okay. If we're not going to get stopped out, if we're going to get pushed to that lower Bollinger, then I want those positions to be able to run for that entire profit to the downside, potentially catch that full 657.22, and then I'd reposition. So that's how that works. And generally for the stops, I only put it about, 50 cents above my exit price. I don't want to be too greedy. I don't want to miss the exit. Um, because sometimes once we get these exits on the 5-minute 20 mile, um, it will only tap that level for literally just 1 or 2 seconds, and then sometimes it's gone. So really take that profit there and wait for the next setup. Great job, everybody. Great job. Okay, so now that we've knocked that trade out, okay, and extremely likely my other puts are going to get stopped out here to the upside. I'm 100% expecting that to occur. If it doesn't, then awesome. This turns into a head and shoulders. Then those puts end up turning into rock stars. But that's not what we're expecting, right? We're just expecting the profit on the simple up and handle. My true expectation should be seeing this pull upward to finish this cup's handle, but I'm not going to be entering calls at this point. Again, I only enter the calls below the lower Bollinger unless I'm seeing some news or something that's creating massive bullish conditions to, buy at that 20 mile, then I will continue to wait just in case we do have some, real breakdown in the structure. Now, I want to take a look at a bunch of stuff really quick. So, you're going to see me scrolling through a bunch of symbols really quick. Do apologize if this looks kind of chaotic. I just need to very quickly see the whole market sentiment, and I can't really see that fully on a heat map. Bitcoin has not completed that cup, so be mindful of that. This can turn into bearish structure here and can break down further, invalidating that cup. Let's see, what price alert is that on QQQ? Looks like to the downside, but I don't know what I have that set on. Okay, boom, there we go. Let me check these other puts on SPY really quick. Okay, so I want to go ahead and start exiting some of these other puts on SPY. Now, is there potentially further downside from this? The likelihood's extremely high. Okay, but I'm not here to be greedy off of my 0 DTEs. So we've hit the lower Bollinger. This is sort of the end of the road on this position. Be fully out, and now we're looking for calls potentially to the upside. Now, I don't want to take calls yet, okay? And even though I was fairly bullish on the day, it is breaking some of this earlier bullish structure that we saw. I don't want to delete all the drawings, but it's breaking our previous cup and handle setups that we saw. Okay. With these previous setups being broken, we now are looking much further for this 656 push to the downside. So we will be looking for that. And from that push, we will be looking for calls to the upside to create the handle to, you know, I can't talk, create liquidity upward for the handle downward. Okay. So we will be looking for this cup to fully close first, again at that 656.84, and from that, I'll be taking calls, but I won't be taking calls until that point. So being very, very patient on that. Yeah, great job, everybody, on that, on those puts. Should have been a super, super good trade. It was very good for me overall. I am looking at the VVIX on my phone really quick. It is at 120.27. So we are still continuing to see this pull upward. Again, I'm going to be super patient on taking calls here. I know that we are starting to push into this lower Bollinger, and that does create the conditions for the calls to the upside. However, I want to see this inverse cup completed first. The liquidity is fully there for it. I want to see that cup completed first before I call the upside. And very likely we'll see a lot of that same sentiment See the breakdown in QQQ's cup there. From that breakdown, we are starting to fill this inverse cup. Now, QQQ technically has fully completed this inverse cup. I am looking for a little bit more weight to be built on this. So, in terms of taking the call to the upside on QQQ, it does look okay, but I am still going to be waiting just a little bit further. SPY, again, we really want to wait for that 650, 648. Even if it's just 40 cents away, we do want to wait for that level. It is very, very crucial for that to complete first before we take the calls. BVIX still pulling upward. Now, potentially, this, and I do apologize for the red background on it, but potentially this can be pulling up towards that 5 minute uh, 20 mile, which currently is at 122.44. Now, I want to circle back to SPY really quick just to make sure we're not missing our entry. Nope, not yet. So even though we did hit the, let's see, the 64, we do want to wait until we hit all the way to the 48. We want this cup to be fully close to the downside first. Even if I miss calls, for example, say this starts bouncing now and we miss these calls to the upside, I would rather miss the call than have this inverse cup not be closed before taking the position. Just because the liquidity is super strong, even if it was only 20 cents off, to me that's still not a closed inverse cup. So I am expecting that to be closed first before taking this position. Even though I think there is a lot of validity in taking the position already. That's just something I want to see before I take it. Because the reason why I'm saying that, I guess, is because we can have this type of price action where because this cup bottom hasn't been fully completed, or cup top, even though it's on the bottom, it can create this condition where we pull up very slightly and then head back down. Now, that's not what we want on our calls. What we want on our calls is to go from the lower Bollinger and have a very clean push up to that 20 mile. So that's what we're looking for. That's why we're waiting for this structure to fully complete before we go ahead and take that call upside. Even though I don't really disagree with taking the calls prior to that. Um, Again, the condition is there to take those calls. Now, I want to look at semiconductors, VVIX, all that good stuff. Hold on, I want to pull up the SPY on my phone really quick because, again, I am just using my laptop right now, so I don't have a bajillion screens. So until I do, this is the solution to that. Okay, so I want to look at semiconductors. See multiple great signals here, actually. So from that inverse cup closing, we also see this smaller inverse cup on the daily, or on the 5 minute time frame, excuse me. So this is telling us that semiconductors definitely want further downside. So I would be looking for that. QQQ, again, potentially it already has the liquidity to start bouncing if it wants to. So calls on that I don't think is unreasonable. But we are expecting a little bit further breakdown in semiconductors. So again, that can be um, alluding to pushing down a little bit further, completing this inverse cup to the downside, and then heading upward. But we will see. Now, if you took those calls already, your exit is going to be at the 658.38. So if we continue pushing upward, take that exit. But I personally did not take those calls yet. I again do want to see this level hit to the downside first. VVIX is seeing a little bit of chop. It pushed up towards the 120.89. Well, I guess 120.88. Seeing a little bit of a rejection in there, so that is somewhat bullish, but still that can be indicative of pulling up towards that 20 mile. So that does mean that that can be a bearish signal. Now on semiconductors, with this inverse cupping completed, we should be expecting a little bit of bullish structure in here or further downside, okay, to create that inverse handle on the nested inverse cup there. Okay, SPY is beginning to push our level, so I am going to go ahead and take those calls on SPY. Let me go ahead and take a look at what I want. Our 20 MA is at the 658.29. So I want the 658 calls. They are a bit pricey right now. They're about 165 per. Okay, went ahead and got some of those. Now, on these calls, again, we are looking for simply just this 20 mile range. If you have running contracts from there, then you can allow them to run. But we have now seen our inverse cup close to the downside. And from that, we should be starting to expect the bullish structure to the upside. Okay, so I'm in my calls. Let me go ahead and take a look at the VVIX. We do see it pushing upwards slightly. So we will be, keeping a watch on this to make sure that we're not going to continue selling downward through these calls. But they are already starting to gain weight, so I'm not too worried about that. Okay, starting to see that bounce. That's good. Now I want to look at semiconductors. Make sure that we're going to be getting our bounce through everything. Should be seeing that bounce out of semiconductors as well. Very likely should go all the way up to that 20 mile range, which is at the 344.35. So that coincides very well with the calls SPY hitting our level. QQQ, massive push down did create the conditions for the calls to the upside. QQQ absolutely should be seeing that 659.20. So looking for that as well. Yes, the bottom white line is the lower Bollinger. Now, I do kind of I have these set up kind of like a road. Um, so if you're thinking about driving on like a highway, you have your solid white lines, which are on the outside lane. Um, that's kind of showing you if you pull off on the outside of the road that, you need to pull back onto the road again. So that's how I have my Bollingers. We are looking for the 658.28 currently for exit on these calls. Overall, with the structure, we were looking for bullish structure overall on the day, and this is the 30-minute time frame because we do see this major cup filling towards the upside. Now, this cup does take us back up to the 662.74, but again, that's only if we continue building the bullish liquidity to the upside. So far, we're not seeing that yet. Um, so far today, it's showing us pretty much all bearish structure. So we will see how that goes. Cute. But again, we're still just looking for this upside from here. Go ahead and just label that. Now our semiconductors, they are having their bounce here. Has not fully hit the 20 mile range, but or no, I guess it is above that range currently. Sorry, my chart's being a little slow. Um, it is hitting this 20 mile range. So on semiconductors, this is potentially that exit. On SPY, not fully our exit yet, so we're still being patient for that. Again, the exit's at the 658.29, so we will be waiting for that level. Our VVIX, I want to take a look at that. It has been pulling down slightly. So again, it was all the way up to the 121.26. It is currently pulling down to the 120.54. So that is showing us that the calls to the upside should land. Should see that level completely hit. QQQ, same thing. Semiconductors potentially can start rejecting here, so that's what we're going to be watching for very closely, because that rejection on semiconductors would mean a rejection through SPY and QQQ, which potentially would mean that we wouldn't get our level. So I do want to take a look at NVIDIA. Oh, NVIDIA's fine. Okay, I'm not worried about NVIDIA. Microsoft. Jeez, it's terrible. We did expect that 373, but it is just absolutely selling off. Okay, so because Microsoft did close that cup, we should be seeing that bullish structure starting to build. So we'll be looking for that out of Microsoft, starting to already see that bounce occur. On SPY, we have not gotten our level yet. Want to double check NVIDIA. 'Cause it does look bullish. Should be completing. Hold on, I want to hide some of this other stuff because that's on the 30-minute time frame. Should be aiming to complete this micro cup to the upside, which would take the video very close to that 180. So that is telling us that QQQ, SPY, everything else should be giving us our exit. Now I do want to take a look at VVIX really quick. And I do want to open up our news. So nothing new yet from the news side of things. Now I do want to look at the 1 minute time frame here. Okay, so on the 1 minute time frame, we do have an inverse head and shoulders. This is a bullish structure, so again, this should be giving us our push towards this upper Bollinger here on the 1 minute time frame. Okay, which would give us the push towards the 20 mile on the 5 minute time frame. So still bullish, still looks good there. Now semiconductors still pushing upward, that's good. So we are seeing a rejection of that inverse handle. means that for semiconductors, this creates a bit of a double bottom here, which becomes a bit of a bullish structure. And because that is a bullish structure, we are looking for the 646.30 to be pushed on semiconductors, which on SPY should be giving us our upside. 1 minute time frame should be giving us our bounce. Oh, let's check BVIX again. Back on time, 5 minute time frame. And pulled up towards 121.26. Pulled down towards the 120.20. Pulled back up to the 120.35. And we're just looking for it to continue pushing downward at this point to give us our signal that our calls to the upside will pay out. This inverse head and shoulders on the 1 minute time frame is playing out, so that is bullish. That should give us our upside in the 5 minute time frame. And I just want to double check NVIDIA and everything. NVIDIA should be pushing that 180 up to the upside. QQQ looking very good on that exit still, which is at the 158.22, just about 70 cents off of that. SPY or exit still at the 658.22, so still looking for that. Circle around to the video once more. This should complete. That looks really good. Let's just check the 1 minute time frame. Okay, so on the 1 minute time frame, it did hit this upper Bollinger, which can create the conditions where it can pull down to the 20 mile and then bounce upward. Okay, so potentially that can occur on NVIDIA. So we will be looking for that. EQ, still bullish structure. Excuse me. I'm trying to yawn in your all your ears. Semiconductors should still be seeing this cup to the upside. Very likely seeing a lot of that same structure that NVIDIA is seeing. Seeing that double bottom. Should see that cup completed to the upside. Let's check SPY again. Okay, so for SPY, we're seeing this inverse head and shoulders playing out. Again, that's looking very, very good for quite a bit of room to the bullish upside. At least on the 1 minute time frame, this is telling us that this wants to complete this cup all the way back up towards that 661. But again, that's not what we're holding for. We're holding for just this 20 ma, which is at the 658.24. Now our exit is starting to come up here, so I am going to go ahead and just watch these calls for a little bit on my phone while I do monitor everything else. Okay, so our exit should be hitting here very soon. And again, we are just not being greedy. We're going to exit the majority of our positions once we hit that 658.26. And if we have runners, we will allow them to run to the upper Bollinger if there's that room. If not, then we will wait for the further downside to take positions. So that's our goal, waiting for this exit at the 658.26. Oh, for semiconductors, I look at SOX, so it's SOXX. The reason why I look at socks specifically is because we trade a lot of socks S and socks Sol, which are the bull and bear ETFs of that fund. So we do trade those quite a bit, and those, specifically trade off of socks levels. Do you see our 20 mile within QQQ being hit? Now, I'm not fully expecting the rejection just yet. I am expecting further pushing there to fully give us our level on SPY as well. Yep, SPY should be pushing that level. VVIX, let me go ahead and take a look at that. It is pulling down, so it is at 119.96. So that is a bullish signal. Should see our upside hit here. So we will continue being patient for that. Okay, and not yet. We will wait again just that 20 more cents, but have my finger on the button ready to sell. Now I do want to look at the VVIX while this is happening just to make sure we're not getting some upside bounce. Okay, so VVIX is still pulling down, so it's at 119.72. So should see the full level hit here. Still pulling down, 119.71, so pull down another cent, which isn't super much, but it does tell us at least they're not hedging the upside or the downside. Here 1973. Give us our exit. Semiconductors still looking for the upside push here, so this should all coincide with us getting the exit within SPY. QQQ looking very strong as well. Semiconductors should push that level. And SPY should give us our push. Come on, 20 more cents, let's go. You can do it. Okay, there we go, and exit. Okay, now you set stop losses on the runners. Again, just targeting about 50 cents below our exit here. So my stops are set for about this 57.70 range. So if we pull down to that, the rest of my calls will stop out. If not, if we're going to continue heading upward, then my runners will catch that upside weight. Very likely they're going to get stopped out here any second though, and I'm going to have zero issues with that. Okay, so everybody's calls should have been super great there. The calls did get chopped up a little bit in terms of premium. I originally entered the 658 calls for about 165 per. I did add a couple more at 162. Okay, but my exit did come up, I believe, at 204. Hold on, let me check. No, so those calls sold for 194 per, which is entirely fine with me. Not the biggest trade. I did expect a little further from those calls, but Still was a successful trade overall. Very welcome, everybody. Okay, so from here, let's see what we got going on. Now, I just want to take a look at everything because we are seeing some major consolidation in here. Okay, and by that consolidation, I really want to label this correctly. With this very large range in here, which basically is telling us that we should be trading from the bottom of this channel to the top, to the top, to the bottom. Okay, very likely that's the type of structure we're seeing in here because already we're starting to see that, top to bottom, top to bottom, top to bottom. Okay, so that's one thing we do have identified is a little bit of a consolidation range. Now, within this consolidation range, we are still within bullish structure on the SPY overall. Other calls did get stopped out, so that is perfect. Waiting for the next trade. Now, for this current setup, I'm going to be completely honest. I don't like what's happening within the daily. We're seeing a pretty large mixture of both bullish and bearish structure, which bearish structure can be fine. Um, Again, we were kind of looking for bearish structure at the top of this cup, so that can be playing into what we're seeing on the day. But what I'm really looking up from here is that I want to turn on the moving averages. This is the daily time frame. Is that I'm expecting the price to really start gravitating upward towards this 20 mile range, which the 20 mile is currently at the 669.40. Um, that's almost exactly that range I've been looking for the support retest, which I'm going to put a ton of drawings up. Okay, they weren't that bad. That support retest, we've been really looking for between that 666 to the 668. So while I don't expect it today, that does mean that tomorrow we will be seeing the 20 mile pulling down further, very likely within that 668 range. Um, that would line us up almost perfectly to have a very large buying day to the upside over at least the next two sessions. Seeing how we are seeing the 5 mile pulling upward, fully expecting that 5 mile to pull upward from hitting that lower Bollinger. 5 mile, assuming we closed at least um, around the 660 today, because we did have some bullish structures going, then that would mean that the 5 mile would be pulling towards the 650, 657, 658 range, which means that potentially we could be seeing another 5 mile test to the downside before we fully see a 20 mile retested to the upside. So that's what we are going to be looking for, not today fully, but likely tomorrow or the next day. Now, overall on the day, we did have some bearish structure, but again, with this larger cup looking to be close to the upside, we were looking for some of that bear structure to form anyway. With this bearish structure potentially being completed, we do see that we can be having a little bit of this double bottom starting to build, and this is the 5 minute time frame. From this double bottom, this would create this cup, okay, which it doesn't look like a cup because there's this big ol' center into it, but you could do that cup as well. really should be expecting a push up towards that 660, basically that 661 range, which would coincide a lot with where we're expecting the price to close, kind of right in there. So I am expecting some chop for the rest of the day. Um, yeah, I'm not really seeing great entries on this. Um, Potentially in semiconductors here, there's a short, and that's purely just because yeah, there's this cup closing here. And this does actually invalidate the previous inverse cup. So top of this cup here, we would be expecting bearish structure towards the 20 ma, back up to the upper Bollinger. So there is room in SOXS calls. That's usually what I trade when I trade semiconductors, is either SOXS or SOXL, which, the bearish and bullish, I got that backwards, bullish and bearish ETFs. So to take this semiconductor trade, you'd just take a 36 call to the upside in SOXS. That would be saying that you're shorting semiconductors or the top of that cup into the handle. So um, that's the trade I'd be looking for. I'm personally not going to take it because I do have to go pretty soon here. But I do think that's a very valid trade. It would be very reasonable. Take that call up to that 36.20. Okay. And this is a leveraged ETF, so you might be thinking it's only 50 cents um, movement or whatever, but you will be getting paid very heavily for that move. Because out of semiconductors, I believe that's like a $3 or $4 move. Hold on. Yeah, that's a $3 move to the downside. So, um, semiconductor, the bear ETF would definitely see, that 50 plus cent movement to the upside. Now with QQQ here, we should be seeing this bullish push all the way back up to the 591.40. So I would be looking for that prior to shorting. But again, semiconductors do not have to correlate to movements in tech, so be aware of that. But that's what I would be looking for. Um, and I want to look at SPY really quick. A lot of chop here. But I'm still fully expecting this cup to close. Let me go ahead and take a look at SanDisk. Yeah, you're very welcome, everybody. Hopefully, we were all able to have some great trades today. Now, let's take a look. Now, I am looking at the daily time frame really quick. So I just want to see what we're buying into or selling into. On the hourly, very large head and shoulders here. Very likely working on an inverse cup to the downside. So a short here does look very prime. Could actually be a very massive move to the downside. Um, Yeah, just the current downside is telling you that you have roughly $13 downside. Um, and that's only if you go towards the 20-minute time frame or towards the 20 mile there. I do think that there's a very valid case on the day that you could be seeing all the way down towards that 609 range, which seems very large when, the price is currently at 676. But there should be some rejection in there. I do think the short position looks very nice. 30-minute time frame, you do have to be a little cautious here because it can pull up to the 20 mile on the 10-minute time frame or on the 30-minute time frame, which would mean that you would be pushing up close to that 696 range. So just be a little cautious of that. But within the 5-minute time frame, it is telling you that you are good to go, that the short position should work out fine. Hourly time frame, it is telling you that potentially you can be seeing a little bit further upside. Potentially you can be pulling up all the way to that 700 range. So I would be very, very, very cautious of that. But overall, there is very structure here to harvest, all about perfectly timing when to take that put though. 5-minute time frame is telling you it looks great. 30-minute time frame and the hourly is telling you that, potentially you can be seeing quite a bit more upside prior to that pull down. So I would be cautious of that, but overall it does look good. And I guess the additional caution upside would be completing this cup on the 5-minute time frame up towards that 700 range, which we do have quite a bit of quite a bit of room prior to doing that. So you're very welcome, everybody. Trying to move my chart. Yeah, I know. I've done that on my phone before, where like I had the stream open on my phone because I was trying to type when I was in another room, and I'm sitting here getting upset at myself trying to move the charts. But yeah, I've done the same thing. Bitcoin. I want to look at Bitcoin really quick. Bitcoin starting to invalidate this cup, so that can be alluding to a lot further selling to the downside. Potentially even forming a very nice double top here. So we can actually delete some of this bullish structure because this inverse cup looks extremely strong. So I would be expecting kind of just that push downward into that. That would take us down all the way to the 71,200-ish range. So that would allude to further selling within equities. On the 30-minute time frame, that would mean a rejection of this 20 mile range, which we haven't had a rejection of that range for quite a while, so it would be reasonable to see that further pull down. Um, I want to check IG and liquid really quick. Now again, these are high yield corporate bonds. Generally, if you're seeing buying to the upside within your corporate bonds, you're generally going to be seeing buying to the upside within the rest of your equities. So a little bit of buying today, but not not super indicative of a major buying day so far. Again, it's just been holding a lot of the same range over the last 3 days. So market isn't too set on the upside, but this is kind of a signal because this is at least telling you that the market isn't selling off. So um the lack of selling here technically is a buying symbol or is a buying signal to the upside. So even though we're not seeing massive buying out of HIG, just the fact that it's not selling is a signal within itself. Semiconductors, I just want to kind of circle around back to everything. Success calls should be up slightly. Again, potentially we can be building some further bearish structure up here prior to pulling downward. On SPY, interestingly enough, this double bottom can actually turn into a head and shoulders, which would invalidate this, continued bullish structure within this cup on the 5-minute time frame. Hopefully you could see why I don't like to take these 20 mile positions or, opening positions at the 20 mile because we'd be sitting here just chopping, chopping, chopping. Um, I like taking the upper or lower Bollinger because it's usually a fairly straight shot towards our target. Um, Oil, still seeing that consolidation. And from the news standpoint, we've still been seeing a lot of, hold on. So I know out of Iran, we've been seeing a lot of mixed news where the Iranians have been saying we haven't been talking to the United States, blah, blah, blah. That was the last I heard about it. Well, so far today, um, they've reviewed the proposal from the United States and Israel, and so far, they say officials have reviewed a proposal and when I closed out. Oh, why did my news move? Okay, officials have reviewed a proposal and find it to be too high. Iran will not let Trump decide when the war ends, will keep defending itself. So we're still seeing a lot of rhetoric and, a lot of tough talk out of Iran, which, you know, Iran generally does that anyway. But it is a little weird when the Iranians have been saying for multiple days now that we've been in talks with them or that we haven't been in talks with them when we've been saying we've been in talks with them. Personally, I think that uh, it's all kind of just a folly in that it's just some psyops, and that very likely it's going to end up with us blowing them up, but we'll see. Now, I want to look at volatility really quick. Did pull down to the 119. We're seeing a little bit of bearish structure in here, but I don't really look at structure too much within volatility again. But potentially can be seeing a little bit of inverse cup and handle there. Did pull down to the 119.05 from that range. It is pulling upward slightly. So if we continue seeing this pull upward, it would pull upward towards that 20-mile range, so the 121. That would mean that SPY very likely would be creating this right shoulder on this head and shoulders to pull downward and reject this range. But again, there's still a lot of conflicting signals because I'm really expecting upside from here. Semiconductors continuing to sell off a little bit. So those success calls are still really good. Not that I would take it at this point. The entry was back in there. I want to look at NVIDIA. NVIDIA's still just doing that breakout, but with that breakout, within that cup, we can expect bearish structure to start forming, pull down prior to heading up too much further from there. So that 180 range we were expecting did hit. So that is awesome. We did not take calls, but would have been a super, super good call. Micron looks like an inverse cup. Dude, that is a gnarly head and shoulders. Very gnarly head and shoulders. Looks like it wants down towards that 350 range. So this would take semiconductors down quite a bit, which would mean that those semiconductor bear calls would be doing very, very, very good. Because again, if you did take those calls, they do have a weak inception naturally built into them, so you would be protected all the way till Friday. So if we are going to be seeing some major selling from here, then these calls could be doing super, super, super good. QQQ have not seen this upward cup completed yet. Still need to see roughly about a whole nother 60 cents upsides before that cup's completed. So rejecting from here can turn pretty bearish. Yes, so my setting for the Bollingers are 2 and 20. This catches the 20 mile. So when you set your Bollingers, the length is basically the moving average you're going to be tracking. So if I have this set to 5, that's going to be tracking the 5 mile. If I have it set to 20, it's going to be tracking the 20 mile. We always want it set to 20 because the 20 mile is always going to be your middle point in between, um, the upper Bollinger and the lower Bollinger. So you always want that 20 mile to be what you track. And again, that is why the 20 mile and the middle Bollinger are going to be the exact same price here because they're tracking the exact same thing. And the offset of 2 catches, that proper offset. So 20 and 2 is the levels for that. Semiconductors here potentially building a bit of a bullish cup, so be aware of that if you are shorting semiconductors. Yeah, I could take a look at gold. I know I was wanting to go over that, some of the longer term stuff. Now, gold, I was expecting to pull down towards this 4,200 range, pull down quite a bit below that, pull down all the way to the 4,102. But from that level, and again, this is on the daily time frame, even if this is going to be bearish liquidity, for example, if this is going to be some major inverse cup, then we should still be expecting quite a bit of upside within gold, all the way back up towards that 4,900 range. Now, again, on precious metals, I am bullish overall. I do think a lot of this selling we've been seeing since the new year has been, largely because of the oil conflict. Um, Pretty much since January 1st, we've seen precious metals, tech, um, Bitcoin, crypto all sell off. We've seen semiconductors and oil gain weight. So, sort of a major rotation there. But I want to look at the on the daily time frame. We see that the 200 MA was bounced off of almost to the penny. So that is a very bullish signal. Yeah, very likely going to pull back up towards this 5,000 range, even if it is trying to build bearish structure. It makes sense to pull back up, build that structure, and then head downward. But I do kind of expect that bearish structure to become invalidated because what tends to happen on the daily time frame is that when you do have these, your daughter came in here. Anyway, we do expect on the daily time frame, these inverse cup handles usually break out to the upside and form inverse or inform cups. So what tends to happen is that it starts pulling upward, and instead of having that rejection back down, we have narrative or sentiment that just continues to keep that price going upward, invalidates that previous bearish structure, and then continues to head upward from there. So usually on the daily time frame, inverse cup handles don't hold. That's not always the case, but for the large majority, that is the case. It's even kind of a meme within the group chat that inverse cup handles don't exist. Yeah, you're very welcome, everybody. I will take a look at silver and apple. I would usually love to play some music on the stream, but um, I know some people are listening to this at work and everything, so I don't want to intrude too much on that. Semiconductors pushing up a little bit. So I want to look at silver, and silver is going to share a lot of similarities with gold. I want to look at the actual futures for a moment. So on the futures, we see a little bit of the same sort of structure that we're seeing within gold. However, in silver, it is a little bit more defined within the selling side. Hold on, I'll show that. We have this major push upward, which allows for a major inverse cup. Okay. From that inverse cup, potentially forming that inverse handle. From that inverse handle, which also is a nested inverse cup, we should be expecting, again, further downside, or, further upside to push further downside if this is going to continue to be a bearish structure. Now, with precious metals, that usually doesn't tend to happen. Um, Again, I am expecting a lot of this inverse handle to continue back to the upside, invalidate some of this previous bearish structure. But that might be wishful thinking. Um, at least on silver, we're expecting to head back up to that $80 range. Should be more than reasonable. Within the actual ETF to SLV, that would coincide with that 73.53. So still roughly about $7 of upside within the silver ETF before we see any, major rejection from that level. Now for Apple, I know that we were looking at some major bearish structures prior. Now this is the daily time frame. Just looking at this for a moment. So what I'd be looking for on the daily time frame for Apple is a rejection off of this 20 mile range and to break into this very, very large red box of liquidity. Sorry for all the drawings and everything. Looks like a mess, but we should be expecting to reject off of this 20 mile. From that 20 mile, reject into that lower Bollinger. Lower Bollinger very, very likely bringing us new lows to the cycle. Again, there's a very large chunk of liquidity that has been pretty much just ran right out of. Um, we've tested this box multiple times. Looks s- super, super, super likely that we're going to aim for that push into this range. So I would be looking to the downside overall within Apple. But again, you do want to wait for that 20 mile range before you really try to take that short. Bitcoin should be hitting our level that we're expecting at that 71,200-ish. EXY is green on the day again, so this can be a bearish signal overall. Yeah, a lot of mixed signals within tech and everything right now, but overall the structure should be telling us that we should be seeing the upside, especially within SPY. Really, really, really should be looking to that 20 mile. 20 mile today, I think is completely unreasonable. We'd have to have some super, super, super good news coming out of the Middle East to cause that type of buying. Um, However, over the next two sessions, the 20 mile will be pulling down towards that 666, 668 range, which is going to be extremely reasonable for us to be within range of that level at that point. So, um, we are seeing some bearish conditions within the market, but the price action and everything overall, I do fully expect to push upward. And that's really what we're waiting on our next positions. I know some of us have some of those dated calls and everything going. We're waiting for that 20 mile for the exit and for the entry on puts to the downside. Um, Overall, the market's still in a very, very, very bearish posture, and I don't expect this lower Bollinger move to see massive buying like what we saw back in April. Many are expecting this to be some massive bounce like we saw back then. Um, but I actually think this is going to be a lot closer towards 2022, 2023, back when we had the bear market in here, which of course I deleted my drawing. But when we had the bear market back in here, pretty sure this is exactly that range. Yeah, 2022 to 2023. Yep, exactly it. So within that bear market, you can see how these lower Bollinger moves generally only go up towards the 20 mile, reject, pull up towards the 20 mile. This is sort of that exception in here, but reject back down, up towards 20 mile, reject, 20 mile, reject, pulls up a little bit, 20 mile rejection, 20 mile rejection, 20 mile rejection, pulls up a little bit, 20 mile pull up, 20 mile rejection, 20 mile pull up, and then we start breaking out of the bear trend towards this range in here. So I do expect a lot of this push up to the 20 mile, reject, up to the 20 mile, reject type of price action throughout the SPY overall. Okay, everybody. If there's any final questions, right now is a perfect time for it because I do have probably about another 2 to 3 minutes that I'm going to be streaming. Do have to get my daughter in the car and everything and get her to school. So, if there's any questions, now would be a perfect time. But other than that, we did have two very good trades on the day today. We took calls to the upside and puts to the downside, originally taking the puts from the upper Bollinger. That's 20 mil. I will mark these in red, which we're not going to be able to see too much anyway because of all the other drawings. And we took calls from the lower Bollinger to the 20 mil. So two very good trades here today. Rest of the plan today for SPY, really you should be expecting the move up to that 661. I would not that I would take calls at this point or anything. This isn't really the range to be taking any positions, but this upside structure looks super strong. Um, Even though we did see a breakdown of prior bullish structure within the same consolidation range, this technically can be creating that cup and handle. Um, Even though it does look a little wonky, do see that we did push down within the day, so this can be creating an inverse cup to the downside as well. Not really looking for that to happen though. Overall, the daily time frame, we are expecting to start heading upward towards that 20 mile. So overall, expecting the buying to, take us up to that range. Hourly time frame is 666.85, looks super strong. So yeah, likely chopping the rest of the day, pulling up towards that 661 range, towards the close. Really expecting the close to be within this range on the day. Our VVIX has been pulling down pretty much the majority of the day, even with the bear structures that we've been seeing. So if this continues to pull down, if we see a large movement down within the VVIX, that would tell us that we would be seeing that upside within the SPY. So I am looking for that, but I do kind of expect a lot of chop. So the Patreon will give you a lot more perks, because it does allow us, or it does allow you, access into the group, which, ideally that's where I would like you to be, because you could see all the other content that we have. All of my posts are going to be there and everything. So if you do want to join or anything, the Patreon would be, um, definitely the place to do that, but I do appreciate support on any platform. Thank you so much. Do I expect further downside today? I really don't. Um, However, semiconductors are telling us that we can be pushing downward. Okay. With semiconductors pushing downward, that would give us downside within SPY, QQQ, everything else. The VVIX, you would be seeing this push upward quite a bit. Um, Probably within this 121 plus range if we were to see real downside on the day. Um, Really looking at the VVIX here because either we're going to push down into this 118 range and be bullish on the day, or we're going to start climbing towards the 121 and be bearish on the day. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for the stream. I had a great stream today. Um, I will be putting out a video tonight. I know I've been saying that for a few days now, but life's been hectic. With that said, enjoy the rest of your day. I hope you all have a great trading day, and I will talk to you all later this afternoon or everything else. So, thank you and take care, everybody. I need to text you. I'm gonna text you. I'm gonna text you.